Well, thank you, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back again to open the Tax Certainty Day. There's an awful lot happening in the tax certainty area these days. We've seen in the context of the two-pillar solution to the tax challenges, legalization, the importance attached to tax certainty. First, on pillar one, we have the inclusion of mandatory and binding dispute prevention and resolution for Amount A. It also requires this for issues related to Amount A with a limited exclusion for certain developing countries. And this, I think, is a truly historic achievement because it is the first time that you have 137 countries and jurisdictions agreeing to mandatory and binding dispute resolution in tax matters. Yes, it only applies to a limited number of companies and only with respect to certain issues, but this is still a major development. Right now, we only have 32 countries that have signed up to arbitration in the MLI. And this is partly because one of the challenges that countries have faced is not having any experience with arbitration. And so there's a lack of trust in the system. And hopefully, with countries gaining experience with mandatory and binding dispute prevention and resolution in the context of Pillar 1, they will get more comfortable with such an approach and trust the fairness of the process. Second, you've seen that successful implementation of the tax certainty elements of Pillar 1 is a precondition to expanding the scope of M&E groups to be covered by Pillar 1. That kind of incentive should help to ensure that the system is workable in practice. The work we are doing to assess ways to improve tax morale also points to improving tax certainty. We've recently concluded a series of regional roundtables with both tax administrations and business representatives to talk about the results of a recent survey of 139 tax administrations and their perceptions of the tax morale of multinationals. And tax certainty and practical ways was a major topic of conversation in the roundtables. We hope to publish the outcome of this and the survey early next year. The FTA is also making a very important contributions in this space with the expansion of the ICAP program, joint audits, and the Tax Administration 3.0 initiative. So a lot of great things are happening in this space. And today you will have discussions about the current tools, are they enough, what the new MAP statistics will tell us, and then we'll have the awards. So I think we have a great program for everyone. And with that, I can turn it over to Will Morris, the chair of the BEAC Tax Committee.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you, Sandra, in particular, for this day, also Akim, but the whole of the team for pulling this together. This is not quite my favorite day of the year. I guess Thanksgiving and Christmas rank slightly ahead of it, but it's like number 3. It's right there. This is really important stuff. And, you know, we spend so much time discussing, walking around, sometimes going around in circles on tax policy. But actually what keeps the world going around is the work that you all do, whether it's in the Secretariat, whether it's in the FTA, and obviously back in your home tax authorities, actually making the world go around and making it go around a little better. And, you know, in particular, we'll spend a lot of time talking about MAP. I do get excited about the MAP awards. I may have had a sneak peek, but given that well, it's not meant to give it away, I won't do, but it's great to actually work on this, because this is the guts of what makes the tax system work. It's the guts of what makes an international tax system work, is that level of cooperation and that dedication to trying to make it work better between countries, to find ways, yes, to pull taxpayers in, but not in ways that you know, make the system work worse rather than make it work better. But in order to ensure that there is more certainty for taxpayers, for tax administrations, tax morale is an important part of this, and BEAC was delighted to be a small part of helping shape the survey, which we did ask for an honest answer about what you thought about business and whether we could be more helpful in some cases. And I promise you we're taking that away and are working on that as well. So I just also like to welcome you all, to say that the work that you're doing on MAP, but as Grace said, now as we think about how do we build this out, how do we take concepts that Achim and Doug and others of you have been working on for a couple of years, like ICAP, and make these into broader based, hopefully broader based, more applicable systems of, in some cases, giving certainty just in specific areas, in some cases, really importantly, preventing disputes from arising before we actually get to a point where they need to be, where you need dispute resolution. Dispute prevention is part of this as well. And then, yes, what we're doing, looking at with Amount A, with the dispute resolution mechanism there, and the hope that over time some of these may work out. So there's this full range from taking a system that we know quite well, like MAP, and making MAP work better, to thinking of new ways of doing this as well. So I'm really pleased to be here. I'm thrilled, much more importantly, that you guys are here, because you're the ones who are actually doing it. And anything that the BAC can do to help with this, we will gladly do. Not, I have to say, after last week, not asking for any privilege, confidential, anything like that, but simply just explaining how business works and how we can help you to make the system work better. So thank you very much. And I guess either back to you, Grace, or to you, Sandra.
I think it's even back to me. Look at this.
Oh, back to Achim, of course.
And certainly, exactly. Yeah, certainly it will be Sandra shortly next. I think we're going to the first substantive items 2 minutes ahead of time. So first for the OECD. Where what we wanted to do is, it says in the heading here, item 2, we say, where are we on tax certainty? And all of this we will tell you in exactly 25 minutes. So that's all you need to know. And I think the idea here is that we're going to hear from different people of different parts of the tax certainty agenda. I think Grace has already mentioned, and so did you, Will, about the significance of what we're doing in the Pillar 1 space, but there's life beyond the pillars. And so today, I think there's also a focus of what's happening every day in reality, and not just in the future, but in the present, to give us a sense. And I think you will have seen, and those that are closer to the work also know, that it's not a coincidence. I think as well, you've said that we've taken some of the things that we have developed, and I see Doug and others over the years, and we'll hear about, whether it's ICAP or joint audits or more in-time prevention, early prevention, better than cure, and many of these models that we have tried to explore of how we can go from a bilateral model to a multilateral model that's more adapted to the environment of business and translate that into the reality also of tax administrations. And we've taken those into the design of the tax certainty processes inside Pillar 1. It's also the same team that works on those, so we can take the learnings of what we do here into the future, and hopefully the best of it. It's no pun intended, Jennifer. Just to make sure that we bring that link. And I think what we then try in this first, I think, where we say, so where are we on tax certainty? It's sort of a question here, because it really sort of then begs the question, well, what's our level of ambition? Like, where do we want to be? Sort of that determines kind of like where we then think where we are. And then, where are we in different spaces? So we'll hear, I guess, on where we are in MAP. And there are questions, are we making a difference? Is MAP making a difference? We see, and we will hear it from Sandra, that, we have inventories still going up. We have competent authorities working extremely hard under very difficult circumstances, COVID, resolving more cases than they've ever done before, but we still see inventories increasing. We still see timelines when we talk to taxpayer, when I do, when we all do. The reality of MAP is still, it takes longer than you would like it in terms of where are we on tax certainty. But then it's also interesting, and I think Sandra is going to walk us through, like, why is that when we talk about the numbers that we're about to release? Is it that it looks long because now we're closing the old cases, which then look long, but it's exactly what we meant to be doing? And then, or is it still systemically that this is still taking too long? And then there's also a question of what is too long. There's Action 14 that has a timeline, but what is it that we should be looking towards? There's, of course, always the question of resources, and does it take more resources? And of course, when we talk about resources, we're not thinking of taking people from the APA function and moving them into the MAP function so that the MAP numbers look better. And so we need to look across resources across the board and all of these things. So I think the idea for this session then very briefly is that we're going to first hear from Sandra, and she definitely does not need any introduction. She knows everything that is happening anywhere in the world. The statistics now, I think, cover 118 countries, which is practically every MAP case that's happening. And she also knows when there are cases that are not happening that should be happening. So I think we get that sense. And then we're going to turn to Sriram, who's going to talk about, what we see in some sense in the big players. What the MAP statistics also show is that, if you look at the top 25 jurisdictions, they represent 95% of new MAP cases. So it's a very concentrated business. So I think Sriram is going to give us a little sense of what happens in the big players, but then also go to the small players, the low capacity jurisdictions, and what's happening there, sort of a bit on the other side of the spectrum. I think then the idea is that John Hughes tells us whether anything that we have said is actually true, because he's, as you know, the head of MAP and APA at the US IRS, to give his experience as not only the chair of the FTA MAP Forum, but also what he sees from the US perspective. We then go to Jennifer, who's going to walk us through what we're seeing about some of these other initiatives. As you will see, and as we all know, there are improvements in MAP, but doing MAP harder alone isn't going to get us to where we want to go in our ambitions. So there's these other programs, whether they're APAs or maybe even earlier, such as in ICAP, where we do coordinated risk assessment, so that we may not actually even get to the audit. We don't get to the audit adjustment. We don't need to get into MAP. We don't actually need to get in APA in certain cases and still provide assurance around taxation in the corporate income tax space. Then we'll hear from Isabelle Brault, who's going to tell us about what it looks like from the Canadian perspective, covering MAP, APA, but also the important multilateral dimension that I mentioned. That's more and more the case that we see in integrated supply chains, and we're trying to get there also as we think about this in the APA and the MAP space. And then also importantly, not to forget, and there's a bit of a link to the amount B, what about standard benchmarking? Can we work more with benchmarking, and what's the potential and what's happening in this space? And then we'll finish it off with Laurence Brochet. I'm happy that she's with us, and she will basically tell us whether what we've said we just made up, and she will keep us honest at the end, which is why she'll speak at the end to make sure that what we're saying reflects your reality, and where it doesn't, she will tell us that it doesn't. So that's the idea for the first session. And with that, maybe over to you, Sandra.
Thank you, Achim. If we look at, we have been doing the MAP peer review for 5 years now. So what have we seen? Did we see a lot of changes? I think we did. Taxpayers are now getting more access to MAP than before. More jurisdictions have published their MAP profile on the OECD website, which is good because it does not only contain practical information on their MAP policy and practice, but also information on the competent authority contact details, which is important if you want to go to MAP in a country where you do not know the competent authority. We have seen more and more jurisdictions with not only MAP guidance, but comprehensive MAP guidance, completely explaining to the taxpayers what MAP is all about, what you can expect from MAP, what MAP can do for you, where are the limits. And I think our peer review has shown improvements in terms of treaty provisions, really necessary, of course, other legislative and organizational aspects. More and more competent authorities are getting better organized, have more resources, which does not only mean more people, but also a better organization, better trained people, more funding. And in some jurisdictions, a clearer division now between the competent authority and the audit function, which is also very important if you want to do MAP as it should go. But with all that, have we seen then improvement in practice? And then if we look at one aspect, for example, does it mean that we close cases now in less time? And if I then take, for example, the new transfer pricing cases that arrived after we started our work in 2016, I think that if we only take those, they are resolved on average within 20 months, which is a lot better than was before. Of course, I need to nuance this number because it only contains the new cases. Well, new cases. A case that started in 2016, I would not call that a new case anymore, but in our statistics, it's with the new cases. We also want jurisdictions to solve and close their old cases, because you could, of course, manipulate your numbers and only deal with your recent cases and then have a very nice average, but then all your old cases remain in inventory, and we don't want that. So I prefer, to be honest, a little bit higher an average where not only new cases, but all cases are being resolved. These old cases, that seems to be a bit of a problem. And I think it asks for extra efforts from competent authorities, because these are not the cases you're sometimes actively dealing with. So you need to make sure that you contact your other competent authority and also your taxpayer from time to time to make sure that you have all the relevant information to make sure that you can go ahead in your case. Now, with what we have seen, is what we have done enough? To start with, MAP is, except if you can solve your case unilaterally, it's not something you do by yourself. So if one competent authority has done everything it could, resources, legislation in order, policy okay, posture okay, but even if you did everything, you're still dependent on your treaty, your MAP partners, because if they haven't done the necessary things and they do not have enough resources, well, you still will not be able to advance in your cases. If they are not solution oriented, but you are, then it will still be a problem to come to agreements in a reasonable period of time. So we need to make sure, and that is something we definitely still need to work on, that we have everybody on board for all aspects we have in MAP. And if we then look at what issues still remain, well, even when access is better, we still see that there are problems for some, especially I would say in combination with some domestic remedies, where like for settlements, where there may still be problems in getting access to MAP. Resolution, like I said, all needed to be solution oriented. In transfer pricing, we know that there is not one answer. If you ask 15 people, you get 20 answers. So you need competent authorities to be able to find one common answer, but it takes effort and time and a willingness to listen to each other and to come up with an answer that both can agree to. And so you also need to be willing to apply your treaty. Don't forget, MAP is a treaty obligation. So for some that still start with MAP, that takes time to realize that it's something they need to do, and they need to do it in good faith. And so it takes time. And then if we look at implementation, I would say there are still problems where the lack of the second sentence that implementation should happen, notwithstanding domestic time limits, is a problem. And even sometimes with that provision, we still see problems. So we still need to work on implementation, because what good does it make you file a case, competent authorities agreeing on it, but then not implementing it? So that's still something that we need to do. Now, to close off, have we obtained something? Have we reached at least part of our goal? I think we have. And 2 weeks ago in an event, an M&E told me that he wanted to congratulate us on everything we already achieved, and that it was very good and that it was even impressive. But he also said that there's still a lot we can do to improve. And I suggest that that is what we will do, make sure that we make further improvements. Over to you, Achim.
And I think it's over for me quite quickly to Sriram, so we stay on time. Otherwise, Sonia tells me we need to accelerate, who's of course running the show in the background. So over to you, Sriram. The big players and the small players, give us a sense.
Thank you very much, Achim. So from the global picture on MAP, as Achim said, we know that there are these two groups of countries that we need to look at. On the one hand, we have those with significant MAP experience, and on the other, there are those with limited MAP experience. For the first group, we see that since MAP is largely concentrated, most of the MAP cases in the world come from this group, which comprises mostly G20 countries. These are mostly countries that have had both stages of their Action 14 peer reviews. And so we can see advanced changes. So to point out a few highlights now from what we've seen, first, as Sandra mentioned, either through the MLI or through bilateral negotiations, a large portion of their treaties are now in line with the minimum standard. We see that all of these jurisdictions have a MAP profile published on the OECD website, and almost all of these jurisdictions have a MAP guidance, with even big players like Germany or the UK making improvements to their MAP guidance in stage 2 of the peer review. Third, we see that most jurisdictions have now added more resources to their competent authority function. And so many jurisdictions have reduced their average time to close MAP cases to come close to the 24-month targeted average. Fourth, and this is very important, that we see major G20 jurisdictions like India and Brazil now allowing access to MAP in all transfer pricing cases, even if the concerned treaty contains the equivalent of Article 9, Paragraph 2 or not. And we think this is a big positive that's come out of Action 14. Similarly, we also see other changes such as greater MAP access irrespective of domestic remedies, more access in anti-abuse cases, etc. And finally, many jurisdictions are now able to implement MAP agreements irrespective of domestic time limits. And I'd like to point out that to reach this goal, countries like Austria and Mexico have even made domestic law changes. That means that irrespective of what their treaties say, they can now implement MAP agreements. And this is a big positive as well. Of course, these jurisdictions still face issues as well. I won't go into them in detail because Sandra just touched upon them, but one thing to point out is that outcomes in MAP have not always been positive, which means that there have been cases of no agreement or partial agreement or resolutions where taxpayers accept other remedies that do not avoid double taxation. So these are things that need to be considered too. But now if we move to the second group of countries, right, we see that most of these with limited MAP experience are low capacity jurisdictions, of course. The big positive that we can point out is that we see active participation in the MAP forum and much better representation than ever before, which I think is a great sign. Action 14 has helped establish MAP as a remedy in many of these countries where this was only a theoretical treaty level obligation before, and this is a big change. A few specific points on those. 41 out of the 55 eligible jurisdictions where the Action 14 peer review was deferred have filed MAP statistics between 2016 and 2020, with 37 of them filing only in 2020. 10 of these jurisdictions, the low capacity ones, have reported having some MAP experience since 2016. 107 MAP profiles have been published in total on the OECD website, and this includes several low capacity jurisdictions as well. The few low capacity jurisdictions that had peer reviews have a MAP guidance as well, in addition to the MAP profile, which of course they put together with the support of the Secretariat while doing the peer reviews. This means that for all of these jurisdictions, the contact details of the competent authority and other details on policy regarding future MAP cases are now published. So this is preparing them for MAP as well, where they don't have it yet. The OECD Secretariat has been conducting MAP trainings or having Action 14 specific sessions as well. This is particularly aimed at low capacity jurisdictions, and this was aimed to build MAP expertise where this is not. We see active participation in these as well, and the Secretariat continues to provide support, of course, on any of the practical issues or questions that are raised to us afterwards. And finally, on this Tax Inspectors Without Borders, the program which all of you know about, the TIWB also provides assistance to low capacity jurisdictions with MAP and APA cases, and they have already been able to help in a few cases before too. Having said all of that, challenges still remain in these jurisdictions as taxpayers don't always have a lot of trust in MAP as opposed to domestic remedies. And this may be why MAP cases remain low, even in jurisdictions where there are active treaty disputes in courts. But to conclude, I'd just like to say that most of these jurisdictions have come a long way since Action 14. So even if the journey takes longer for some of them, they believe that we will get to the finish line for all inclusive framework members soon. So that's all I wanted to say from my side, and I can hand it over back to Akim. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sriram. Thanks for the insights. I'll hand it over with no ado to Mr. Hughes, who will tell us both as his perspective as the chair of the MAP Forum and of course from the perspective of the US IRS, both on MAP and APA. John, over to you. And good.
Very good. Nice to see you, Joachim. Thank you. And nice to be with all of you, and happy Tax Certainty Day, right? That's we need to wish each other that greeting here today. Indeed, it's very nice to be with you, and I would like to start by saying, on behalf of the MAP Forum, a big thanks to Sandra and all of her team at the Secretariat. All of the peer review reports, all the back and forth with the jurisdictions that are being reviewed, the compilation of statistics, the trainings. My goodness, all the things that have just been touched upon by Sriram and Sandra. Those are things behind the scenes, perhaps, to many of you viewing today, but those of us in the MAP Forum know that it is a tremendous amount of work, and so a very sincere thanks to them for all that they have done. Quite truly, the success of Action 14 to this point, and indeed, the success of Tax Certainty Day itself would not be what it is without their efforts. So thanks very much to them. I'd like to now, as Joachim just said, kind of build upon some of the things that Sriram and Sandra have mentioned from my perspective as chair of the MAP Forum and also director of our APMA program, which represents the Office of the U.S. Competent Authority in our treaty negotiations, or our MAP negotiations, both for transfer pricing and for non-transfer pricing matters. One theme that you have, I think, picked up from the remarks thus far is there's a bit of a, on the one hand, there are certain things that we want to point out and highlight, and on the other hand, there are some areas for improvement. I'm going to continue with that theme and indeed start with, on the one hand, rightly applauding the efforts of the MAP Forum, our delegates to the MAP Forum, and also then just our competent authority members who are working tirelessly in many ways, outside of the MAP Forum to continue the work of resolving and preventing disputes under our treaties. Suffice it to say, 2020 was a very challenging year for all of us, of course, but very early on, the MAP Forum came together and had a very good collaborative discussion about ways in which we could continue endeavoring under the MAP article to maintain momentum on our MAP and APA cases. A lot of very good ideas were discussed, and Martin, indeed, and Oki, I believe, will continue to will describe some of those efforts in greater detail. That work then continued alongside other work streams that we had. In particular, we continued work on the various focus groups or focus items that were established under the Santiago Communique, and Isabel will speak to several of those here momentarily. Also, many of you will remember that at the end of last year, OECD published some important guidance on the application of the guidelines to COVID-19 issues, and the MAP Forum was collaborated very closely with WP6 in producing that guidance, and that, of course, was all alongside the work that we have done and continue to do on improving and enhancing the Action 14 minimum standard as part of the Action 14 2020 review. So a lot of good work done, kind of at that high level to try to advance the tax certainty agenda and the underlying commitments of Action 14. So on the other hand, right, there are areas for improvement, and I think what I'll do is just note that these areas for improvement, for the individual taxpayer, with its individual matter, its individual case, be it MAP or APA, some of the improvements and things may seem remote, right? They may not feel as close or connected to your circumstance. So yes, while access to MAP is being broadened, and that's very good. There are, though, systemic instances of access to MAP either being denied or, importantly, ways in which effective access to MAP is not available, and such that, for example, the competent authorities are not able to come to a resolution to alleviate double tax because one side or the other is not able to deviate from its position in a MAP case, and of course that is problematic. That can lead to instances of double taxation, and that is something that we're addressing within the MAP forum and discussing the issues surrounding it. But again, for the individual taxpayer, it can pose real problems. Looking at APAs, it's all too common for the A, if you will, and APA to be missing. That is to say, there is no advance pricing in the agreement. It's that the term of the APA, when the agreement is concluded, may be nearly at its end, if all of the years have not already expired. So that's a problem. And so along those lines, there is much room for improvement. There are things for improvement when, for example, we see both in the MAP forum, and we've discussed this, and also from my perspective as within the U.S. Competent Authority Office, where we see the same taxpayers in for MAP for the same issues year after year, if not, or cycle after cycle. That is a problem. That's a problem. The system is not working when we see that. Again, from our perspective, the system needs to improve when, kind of setting aside the specifics of the statistics and whatnot. When I look at my internal inventories and I see that over a third of our cases involve quite modest amounts, we'll say between 5 and 10 million or less, and over a third of those are of our inventory involves those kinds of modest cases. And those cases take nearly 3 years to resolve, right? That's a problem. That's a problem. And again, for the taxpayers that are facing that kind of situation, we are continuing to try to address that, but work remains to be done. So with that, let me go to a third hand, if I may, right? There's the efforts of the competent authorities, and indeed, we are all here today because we are all committed to the goals of tax certainty and to Action 14. But I often, in remarks like this, I often like to end by reminding taxpayers that you are stakeholders in the process, that the success of your MAP case or your APA case very much does depend upon you. It depends upon your providing complete submissions at the outset. It depends upon your engaging with both or the multiple competent authorities that may be involved. It very much depends upon your providing data in response to requests from taxpayers. So there are many ways in which taxpayers can indeed improve the dispute prevention and resolution processes themselves. And so with that, we will continue to work within the MAP forum well, this past year and in the next year, along all these different dimensions. But we appreciate your engaging with us individually and collectively towards those ends as well. So with that, Akam, I believe perhaps we turn it to Jennifer, but I leave it to you.
Absolutely. We're turning it to Jennifer that we've been waiting for. Good to hear from you, Jennifer. The floor is yours.
Hi, and happy Tax Certainty Day, everyone. I'll follow that theme. It's my pleasure to be able to pick up on the theme of dispute prevention. I think that was one of the themes Akam mentioned at the beginning, with a report out on the status of the ICAP program in particular. We are nearly 100% complete with the ICAP 2.0 risk assessments. These were, the timing was certainly affected by the pandemic, but the silver lining was that the pandemic forced us as a group to figure out if we could do this work remotely and using virtual tools. And I think it's been a huge success. We all agree that there are instances where face-to-face meetings would be better, but by and large, we figured out that we can do it. So that's great news for the ICAP program. Secondly, our group has expanded in both Asia and in South America. We're excited to have new tax administration colleagues, but more importantly, this offers an opportunity for M&Es located in and operating in those regions. So this is exciting, and we anticipate more tax administrations will be joining as time goes on. The program is now open on a permanent basis with rolling submission periods, rolling submission dates, all of the details are available on the OECD FTA ICAP website on the page. There's a lot of good information there. If you're interested, I would strongly encourage you to look that up. But I guess what I really wanted to focus on, what does this all mean for M&Es and for business? And why should an M&E consider participation in ICAP? Especially we have some good tax certainty tools available to us. You know, nothing in what I say suggests that the APA program is not still a great way to go for tax certainty. We, as tax administrations, sometimes do joint or simultaneous audits to a great tax certainty result. But ICAP presents something new and different. It's an alternative option that really should be considered by any M&Es that are looking for tax certainty, because it offers efficient use of resources, broader coverage than most APAs, and the potential for issue resolution within the program. So the way I would say it, in other words, these are all interrelated concepts, but ICAP presents an extremely efficient path to tax certainty for M&Es due to the broad coverage of transfer pricing and permanent establishment issues that it considers, and the consideration of multiple tax administrations at the same time. Akam also referred to the bilateral versus multilateral models, and ICAP is inherently it's a multilateral program. That is by design. So this is moving us in a multilateral direction. So most of the tax administrations participating in the ICAP program, most of us have now been through 1 or 2 ICAP pilots, which is great news for business because we have worked through and established some very good procedures. We've tested those procedures in the 2 pilots, and we've become more effective and more efficient working together in a multilateral risk assessment engagement. So we've got a lot of good experience to build on going forward. One of the ways that ICAP achieves efficiencies is that it is designed to work with pre-existing documents and information that M&Es already have, contrast this with audits, maps, and APAs, which do require M&Es to prepare some specific documents, submissions, for example, and other things, other tools like that that are required. I don't think there's any question that ICAP is a more efficient process than first being audited and then secondly going to MAP. I think that one, I'm not sure anyone would take up that argument. So that right there shows an efficiency. Even if there are some not low risk determinations that come out of ICAP, I would still make that argument. ICAP is particularly well suited for M&Es with similar transactions and operations across a broad range or a range of different jurisdictions. And that is because ICAP is very unique in that it provides M&Es with an opportunity for insights into what, why, and how tax administrations, a group of tax administrations, think about the issues presented by that M&E's business. So even in the case where one or more tax administrations might find a transaction or an issue presented to be not low risk, ICAP offers the transparency of showing the M&E why that is and how we got to that conclusion, which then allows the M&E to consider that going forward in how it structures its transfer pricing policy and what it wants to do in future years. Moreover, any following compliance activity that might follow on an ICAP risk assessment, would hopefully be a more efficient process, whether it's a joint audit, whether it's an APA, or an audit that should be more targeted and focused because there is the benefit of the broad multilateral risk assessment work that has already been done. So all of this is to say that ICAP presents a new option for tax certainty. The two pilots have been relatively small, but we've had a variety of M&Es participating in a range of industries, and they cover a range of complexities in their businesses as well. So we as a group, we are ready to perform multilateral risk assessments and provide assurance, and we just invite everyone to consider it and reach out to any participating tax administrations or the OECD Secretariat with any questions or requests for information. Thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you also for being so involved and helping to push forward some of these very innovative features, I think, that are keeping with the times, and they're also helping us think about the future inside Pillar 1. So thanks very much for that. If you've looked at the clock, we're slightly behind schedule, but that is fine because we actually thought that we're probably going to take 10, 15 minutes longer. So we're turning next to Isabelle and Laurence, and we're not suggesting that there's no time for business to speak at the end. We'll just eat a little and then hopefully we'll go a little longer. So over to you next, Isabelle.
Thank you, Akim. I'll try to be brief. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I agree with John and Jennifer. We've had a very busy year as FTA MAP Forum members, moving in parallel on the BEPS 2020 review, the MAP peer reviews, our volume of MAP cases, the work on the pillars 1 and 2, but also on the work of the 3 focus groups that were mandated by the Santiago communiques in 2019. So as co-chair of the FTA focus group, I'll try to give you a quick reminder and a status report on these initiatives that fall within the tax certainty agenda. So first, improving the advanced pricing arrangements process, which to me exemplifies tax certainty initiatives, since it's a tool where taxpayers and tax administrations are able to engage early on and agree on a prospective basis on the conditions that will govern their future transactions, normally for a 5-year period. On this one, in very simple terms, as John has mentioned, we're looking to bring back the advanced pricing arrangements, or the A and APA. Too often, taxpayers and competent authorities will not reach an agreement until the end of the term, thereby losing the prospectivity item. So the objective of the focus group is to reduce the overall time that it takes to come to an agreement. We've mentioned some of the keys: early engagement by competent authorities who should meet early on in the process to foresee any hurdles down the road. Making sure that submissions from taxpayers are as complete as possible, and that requests for additional information from competent authorities are clearly presented and sufficiently supported. I want to thank our stakeholders, including the taxpayers and the tax practitioners community, who have provided submissions through our process, as well as the 9 other tax administrations that are part of our focus group, for all their input and their great cooperation. So in terms of next steps, Akim, so following consultation, the advisory group is now developing a handbook and best practices. We're looking to meet in the new year, reviewing submissions received and hopefully developing best practices. Respondents to our, maybe just a quick overview on our process, respondents are overall very supportive of bilateral APAs, and not surprisingly, the effectiveness of APA is significantly viewed as being challenged by the length of the APA process, as I just mentioned, and the resources required as well to successfully negotiate bilateral APAs. With this in mind, the focus group is concentrating on reduced timeframes, creating better experiences for taxpayers and competent authorities, while hopefully maintaining sufficient flexibility to accommodate unique complexity of each individual case. Maybe a quick overview on the other 2 initiatives that are the subject of focus groups. We're looking to improve the APA process as well, more specifically in the context of multilateral APA negotiations, as you just mentioned, where the expected complexities that we are faced with in a bilateral context are only exacerbated in the multilateral setting. When we're looking to determine conditions that will be appropriate for all tax administrations involved, and in respect of transactions and M&Es and entities that are spanning several jurisdictions. I'd say the advisory group on multilateral maps and APAs is focused on the development of a handbook as well. There are significant challenges that are being foreseen. We're hoping that the handbook will provide centralized practical guidance on the legal and the non-legal issues faced by jurisdictions, as well as providing a procedural framework, a framework to efficiently handle multilateral cases. This could include providing guidance on defining when a multilateral case may be appropriate, and how local differences may influence as well how a multilateral engagement can be conducted. Finally, the 3rd area that is the subject of a focus group, very important work on benchmarking. Often a key element in the context of transfer pricing analysis. The work on this is well underway. We're exploring the potential use and sharing of benchmarks for standard situations to avoid disputes from happening, and where they do happen, be able to solve them more quickly. So on this, in terms of status, just last week we had a joint plenary session between the FTA MAP Forum and Working Party 6, where Working Party 6 colleagues made excellent presentations on this and on Amount B under Pillar 1 as well. Akim, I think colleagues will agree that during our meeting, well, certainly I found that tax administration's delegates raised very concrete and relevant questions that I think can help orient further work on this element of the tax certainty agenda. So to sum up, well underway, a lot of work and great challenges to be discussed. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And also thank you for reminding us of the significance and the ongoing work and the amount B space that sometimes gets forgotten. But yeah, amount B is alive and perhaps not yet kicking, but very much alive in the work that we do. I think with that, over to you, Laurence. What do you make of it? I guess with views on ICAP and anything else on reactions from the business side to what you've heard and what you see in your day-to-day life.
Hello, thank you, Hakim, for letting us speak today and present our ICAP and our experience. And I am here with Zachary because Zachary led the process fully with me and one member of his team. So it's really 2.5 persons because obviously I could have been, I wasn't full-time on that, but Zachary really led this fully. What I want to say is the outcome is positive for us, and I join Jennifer best for what she said and the summary that she provided. Just in a few words, we started the ICAP late. We accepted to go into ICAP, but we asked to start a bit later. So we really started at the end of 2020. We had we had 2 video conferences with all the tax authorities. Some of them were on the phone, some of them were in video like we are today. And then it started fully. We received risk assessments 3 weeks ago now, a month, 3 weeks ago, from all the tax authorities. They are all positive except one country. And really for us, that was really good. We're very happy of the outcome, I've got to say. But indeed, it's a lot of work, and that is important. This has to be taken into account because that's practically 1 FTE for all this time. It was 500 documents shared. It was over 30 hours of meetings. That's 4,000 pages, and it's about over 20 questionnaires which have been shared. And what I want to insist on as well is that this is a fully transparent exercise. We have questions from each tax authorities, but all the questions and all the answers were shared on a data room that we put in place, and all of the tax authorities could download and review the information. So it's really transparent. And there is a side that we don't see, and I think the French tax administration is on the line. I don't know who's on the line, if it's Arnaud Sage. But what I want to say is that his team, two persons, one mainly, worked very closely with Zachary, and they did a great job representing us. It was a hands-to-hands work, and that is something we've never done with the tax administration, obviously. And they represented us, they coordinated, they had calls on their side with all the other tax authorities. So obviously when there is a map with 1 or 2 tax authorities, obviously they're used to do that, or bilateral APAs as well. But here there were 7 tax authorities. So the exercise was obviously more difficult to do because us, the associate step, we decided we were very greedy, and we wanted to we tried to put in all our transfer pricing, mainly the distribution and our royalties. This is what we were interested in. But I could say that there's over 80% of our flows which have been reviewed. So it is good. It is a success. Now, indeed, the risk assessment for some of them, they are raising a few topics that we need to discuss further with the tax authorities. And this is where I think we need to go further, because I don't know if this should lead to the request of an EPA, or if we can manage with the tax authorities to still be an informal way of working and not getting into an APA which takes time, etc., and find a quick resolution for the future. And Jennifer best mentioned that it helps on the future as well, and I fully agree with her. But we need to see with them how we can move further for the future on some items. There were not many, but there were some which have been highlighted, and that was good that we had that exchange on the paper. So I would like us to go further on that. For us, we have next steps, but I would say globally it is very positive. Frankly, I will try to make sure that other groups are getting into it. What I want to say as well is that we haven't done a proper recap with the French tax authorities, so we would do that properly before the end of the month, because that's important as well, that we are in agreement as well with them to go further and see if other companies want to go in. So that's my point of view. Zachary, if you want to add something quickly.
Yes, hello everyone. So yes, it was a tough job with 7 tax authorities, but it was also a great initiative and nice for us because we received more than 22 questionnaires. Some questions were quite similar, but depending of the country, the questions were also different in nature, and they were not looking all at the same thing. So it was interesting to have different areas that were explored by the different tax authorities. And as all the questionnaire and our answer were provided in the data room, all tax authorities have access, I would say, to all the question and answer that give them, I would say, maybe also answer to question they didn't raise, but they could have in mind. So that was very interesting. The other part that we understand that the tax authorities were discussing all together some topics, and it was the first time for us, because when we have a tax audit, generally speaking, there is only one discussion between us and the local tax authorities. Here, on the same topics, several tax authorities were discussing, and for us, it was a great improvement. So for us, it's clearly a success. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to participate to this program. Really appreciate it. And if we can continue the discussion with tax authority, we will be very happy to do so. Thank you so much.
Thanks. That's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you also for this vote of confidence. Thank you very much. I think it's worth listening to all of this, despite the fact that we're running slightly behind the schedule. We will now, you've seen, I've put on the jacket, we're now going to the release of the MAP statistics. And there, I think in the next session here, item 3, we'll first hear from Félicie, who will tell us what the numbers actually show. And then I think we hear from Martin O'Rourke, who's the vice chair of the FTA MAP Forum, a bit whether this resonates with the UK experience, and then we hear from Oki from Japan, who will tell us about how this affected also Japan, given that the face-to-face was a difficult, if not impossible, task during the pandemic, and what they did to keep all of this on track. So over to you, Félicie, first.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Hakim, for giving me the opportunity to talk on the MAP statistics now. So I will give you a brief overview of the 2020 MAP statistics. As we all know, 2020 has been a challenging year for everyone, and especially for those who are involved in cross-border activities. So we'll have a look at what the numbers tell us about MAP and what the 2020 numbers tell us about MAP. So maybe just to start, a very short introduction. What do we have to play with this year? You said it in introduction. In 2020, we had 118 jurisdictions that reported their MAP statistics. So we know that we are really covering practically almost all MAP cases worldwide. Very few cases are started with jurisdictions that are not reporting their statistics. And what we can see is not only aggregated data across jurisdictions, but also really granular information that relates to country-specific issues and information. And I will say a small word about that at the end of my presentation. We have a compare your country tool that allows us to compare the countries. But let me start immediately with an overview of the inventories. You said it in the introduction, the inventories are always increase every year, and 2020 was not an exception to this rule. Here, what you can see on this graph is the transfer pricing cases in blue and the other cases in light orange. You may know that the other cases relate to other issues than attribution or allocation of profits, like withholding taxes, issues that relate to individuals, or to the characterization of a permanent establishment. This graph here, let me warn you, this graph shows the sum of all the inventories of all jurisdictions together. So there is no elimination of the double counting of the cases that the jurisdictions have together. So this includes double counting. So we don't have 10,000 cases to handle, but probably something around half of that. What we also see here is that transfer pricing cases account for more than half of the cases that are left in the inventory, because it's 55%, while other cases are also significant in numbers because they represent 45%, of course. So now you may wonder, but why are these cases always increasing? Well, the answer is, of course, partly in the number of cases that start every year. And this is, again, an overview since 2016 of the trends of all the cases that started for all the jurisdictions that reported their MAP statistics. Again, in blue, you have the transfer pricing cases, and in orange, the other cases. We see that for transfer pricing cases, this has been a constant increase, and 2020 was not an exception to this rule, because we have had an increase by 15% of the cases that started for transfer pricing cases compared to 2019. While for other cases, we have had a slight decrease in the recent years, and it has been a decrease by 2% in 2020. So what we can see, though, is that overall, there has still been an increase in the number of cases started, and the COVID crisis didn't really stop taxpayers' willingness to go to MAP. We know that some jurisdictions have also facilitated the way taxpayers could actually file their MAP request via electronic filings, for instance. Now, in comparison to that, because of course, when you look at inventory, you look at cases that start, but you of course also look at cases that are closed. So if we look at the cases that are closed, and that's what you can see now in the darker colors on the same graph, the cases closed increased as well, but at a slower pace. And for the first time, we have had a decrease, as you can see here in orange, for the number of cases that were closed for other cases, while the number of cases that were closed for transfer pricing cases increased slightly. This again, and I should have said that at the beginning, includes double counting. It is again based on the sum of all the cases that the jurisdictions have reported. Still, there has been quite a significant number of cases that were closed in 2020, because competent authorities have adapted and continued to resolve their MAP cases. They have replaced their physical meetings with other forms of communications, including digital meetings, and some have also prioritized some simpler cases in order to be able to cope with the increase of the new cases. So this was an overview of the cases that started and the cases that were closed. And as you can see, the cases that were closed is slightly lower than the cases that started. So of course, the inventories are increasing. Now, I also want to show you the fact that MAP remains concentrated. What you can see on this graph, before we analyze other trends, is just the number of cases that started in 2020 for the top 25 jurisdictions. Kim, you said it in introduction, these 25 jurisdictions represent 95% of the cases that started in 2020. And if we only look at the top 10, then these jurisdictions account for 3/4 of the cases that started in 2020. And again, you have the difference per type of cases. I will not comment on that, but you can see that it's very different from one jurisdiction to the next. Now, back to our cases closed. And something that is very important for Action 14 is, as you know, to seek to resolve the MAP cases within 24 months on average. This year, a significant portion of the jurisdictions that closed cases have actually managed to close their cases in less than 24 months. It's the case for 65% of the jurisdictions, which is an improvement compared to last year, because it was 55% in 2019. However, there are, again, still differences per type of cases. The global average for all cases together is around 25 months. And we can see that for transfer pricing cases, which always take longer to be closed, we are almost at 3 years, while for other cases, we are around 18 months. We know that there have been efforts being made to close old cases, and that so in one way, it can, on one hand, it can increase the time taken to close cases. And we also know that some jurisdictions reported that they closed simpler cases during the pandemic, which have allowed them to have actually a lower time, a shorter time frame, because they prioritized those that they could close quickly. And this only shows us what we have for the cases that were closed. But we know, and we talked about that there are still a lot of cases in the inventories that have been pending for a long time. It's not possible for us to estimate the time that will be necessary to close, of course, these pending cases, but we can compare the portion of cases that were pending before the jurisdiction joined the inclusive framework or before 2016, and the portion of the cases that were initiated after the jurisdiction joined the inclusive framework or after 2016. And that's what you can see here on this graph per year. We can see that, of course, the number of free cases that were received before 2016 or before the jurisdiction joined the inclusive framework is smaller and smaller over time. But still, we have now 15% of the 2020 end inventory that relates to cases that have been pending for at least 5 years. So taking this into consideration, plus the fact that the MAP inventories have increased in the majority of jurisdictions, we know that additional actions may be required in the coming years. Now, let me turn to the outcomes. Of course, it's not only about closing MAP cases, they also need to be resolved. Here, we can see on these two pies, so on the left hand, the transfer pricing cases, and on the right-hand side of the slide, the other cases, we can see that the outcomes are overall very positive. 75% of the cases that were closed resolved the issue at stake, and only 3% are closed with no agreement. Note that there are still a lot of cases that are closed with a unilateral relief that is granted by either competent authority. And those numbers are almost the same as those of 2019, which is slightly more than 10% for transfer pricing cases and around 20% for the other cases closed. This is very good outcomes, because it also shows that competent authorities can deal with MAP cases before they actually need to go to the bilateral phase and resolve the issue at stake. Still, what we can see here on the left-hand side is a significant drop in the proportion of cases of transfer pricing cases that were closed during the bilateral phase with a full agreement resolving the taxation at issue. We have 55% of those cases of cases closed in 2020 that were closed during the bilateral phase with such an outcome, while it was 75% in 2019. Here, we think that COVID-19 crisis actually affected the quality of communication between some treaty partners, and this may have caused that fewer cases could be resolved during the bilateral phase. Now, one last thing to note on this one is the increase in the proportion of cases that were closed with withdrawal by the taxpayer. This is quite difficult for us to interpret and to know whether it's positive or negative, as those taxpayers decided to close the case. But it's not that a solution was found at the level of a domestic remedy, for instance, because then it would have been reported otherwise. So maybe the taxpayer realized there was no problem. Maybe the adjustment itself was withdrawn, or maybe the taxpayer withdrew because of he agreed to an audit settlement, although they could still have had their case resolved in MAP if there remained double taxation, because the minimum standard requires that access continues to be granted for these cases. So in short, it's hard to assess whether it's positive or a negative outcome, but we noted the increase in 2020. We wanted to tell you about it. And before I finish, just a very brief overview of what we can find on the website and the country-specific information. So here you will have just a very snapshot, a very short snapshot of what you can find, but I hope it will give you the appetite for going on the website and looking at what we have there. For each jurisdiction, we show the evolution of their inventories, the breakdown of their cases between all the new cases, transfer pricing and other cases, the outcomes that were reached for the cases that were closed, as well as a breakdown per treaty partner for each type of cases, for the new cases that are reported on the jurisdiction by jurisdiction basis. And the last piece of information that you can find and that you may want to play with is our compare your country tool, where you can compare the countries based on whatever metric you are interested in. And before I finish, you may realize that this is actually a lot of work. So I wanted to thank the whole team for putting all this together in a quite short time frame. And we hope that you will find it interesting and insightful. With that, over to you, Aki.
Thanks very much. And like sometimes we don't always follow exactly the agenda. We're running a little late. We will swap around a little bit. I think we will now go to the MAP Awards because Bob Hamilton, who's the Commissioner, Canada Revenue Agency and the FDA Chair, does have a hard stop. So we'll come back to the numbers, so stay tuned. But we will now be moving to the MAP Awards session. So we can still do the MAP Awards. I hope that I can see. Yes, I have seen Bob Hamilton here. Sorry, Bob, we're running a little late, but over to you. We'll do the MAP Awards next, and then we come back to that segment on the statistics, having heard the highlights from Félicie so far. So over to you, Bob, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Kim. I hope everyone can hear and see me. That's great. And welcome everyone, and it's a pleasure to be back again for the MAP Awards. We've seen the statistics presented by Kim and Félicie, and that shows us that while there is some room for improvement, we should acknowledge that many competent authorities are making significant progress to improve the processes and resolve their cases in an efficient, effective, and timely manner. And moreover, the efforts taken by the competent authorities to make such progress is in spite of the fact that we've been living through a pandemic. And as I heard in one of the earlier presentations, while the pandemic has posed some challenges for us, it's also opened up some areas for innovation and some ways that we can find to do things a little bit differently than we thought before. And hopefully some of that will last as we exit out of the pandemic. With all that, it's my pleasure to join you today to present the MAP Awards and to recognize a number of jurisdictions for their efforts. Today, awards are being presented in 5 different categories, all of which relate to a different aspect of managing a MAP program. The final category is a new award for Most Improved Jurisdiction. It's been instituted this year to specifically acknowledge the efforts taken by competent authorities to resolve MAP cases during the COVID-19 crisis. The top jurisdictions in each category have been determined based on the specific metrics below, as well as taking into account the time taken in MAP, as well as the outcomes reached. So the first category is speed, and it rewards the jurisdiction that needed the least time on average to close its cases. The second category is the age of the inventory, and this goes to the jurisdiction with the smallest percentage of pre-2016 cases in its inventory. The third category is caseload management, and this is given to the jurisdiction that best managed its total caseload being the number of cases in its starting inventory plus the cases started during 2020. The fourth category is cooperation, and this category rewards the jurisdictions that worked well together, which is such a key element of the MAP process, and one where I hope we can just keep continually having improvement. And the final category, as mentioned, is the most improved, and this is the jurisdiction that showed the most improvement in resolving MAP cases with positive outcomes. So let's turn to the first category, which is the Speed Award. And there's an award for the best average time for transfer pricing cases and an award for other cases. And the winners are Switzerland for transfer pricing cases and Australia for other cases. You can applaud using the applaud button or congratulate the winners via the chat function. Now let's look at the results. For transfer pricing cases, we looked at jurisdictions that closed at least 50 cases, and we see that 2 jurisdictions closed their cases on average in less than 24 months. It took Canada 23 months and Switzerland 20 months on average to close their transfer prices cases, and the Netherlands rounds out the top 3 jurisdictions with an average closing time of 25 months. For other cases, we looked at jurisdictions that closed at least 20 cases, and the top 3 consist of Luxembourg at 10 months, Ireland at 7 months, and Australia, which closed its cases on average within 6 months. Now, that's Switzerland. Let's say congratulations for this achievement. And would you care to share with us what helped you achieve this impressive average time?
Yes, thank you. And hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me. First of all, I would like to thank the Secretariat for its outstanding work in putting together these statistics. I can imagine that is not an easy task. And we are, of course, very much pleased to hear that we won this award. And I would like to highlight maybe 2 reasons why we believe that we were able to become much more efficient than in previous years. And I think one is due to this pandemic and due to the travel restrictions. We focused on smaller and less complex cases, and as it is much more difficult to discuss complex cases over the phone or via video conferencing, and for such small and less complex cases, it's usually easier to find a mutually acceptable solution. And I think another important point is the fact that because of our close monitoring of our inventory, we tried to give older cases higher priorities already in the past. And this process was started already a couple of years ago, so that the number of very old cases decreased constantly in our inventory. And finally, of course, I would like to take the opportunity to thank to our MAP partners. I think without the very good cooperation we experienced during our MAP discussions, it would not have been possible to find any solution for any case. So thank you very much again, and take care.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And let's now go to Australia and say congratulations for your achievement as well. And would you care to share some of the reasons for your success?
Thank you very much, and hopefully I'm coming through clearly. Firstly, I just wanted to say what a great privilege it is to be accepting this award on behalf of Australia. We do take a lot of pride and invest quite a significant amount of energy and resources into our MAP program and ensuring it's running as efficiently as possible. And so to have this recognised with receipt of this award is very much appreciated. We would attribute our success to both our strong domestic focus and considerable domestic resourcing that we apply to our MAP program, ensuring that we take a very targeted approach to progressing our MAP cases as quickly as possible when they enter into our program. But we would also attribute it significantly to the strength of the relationships with our treaty partners. And indeed, as has been acknowledged throughout the course of this evening, throughout the course of today's meeting, it has proved challenging over the course of the past 2 years to manage those relationships in an environment where we've not been able to conduct face-to-face meetings as we traditionally have. And so I think it's tested the ability of all of us to find new approaches to engage and to continue to foster productive relationships between each other to ensure that we could progress MAP cases as efficiently as possible. Of course, we know we can always do better, and we know taxpayers expect us to do better in improving timeframes. And so we are continuing to focus on how we can achieve further efficiencies in our MAP cases across the board. We, of course, expect arbitration will continue to play a significant role in ensuring jurisdictions remain focused on improving efficiencies in the MAP processes. And we look forward to working with our respective treaty partners in developing those processes over the coming years. So I just wanted to thank the OECD and its members and everyone on this call for the continued work in this space. And we look forward to working with all of you in resolving future challenges that might arise in this program and continuing to create a better MAP process for all. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And congratulations again to Australia and to Switzerland for the best average times in transfer pricing cases and other cases. Let's go now to the second category, which is the age of inventory. And this goes to the jurisdiction with the smallest percentage of pre-2016 cases in its ending inventory. And jurisdictions with more than 100 cases in inventory were taken into consideration. And the winner is Spain. Congratulations, Spain. Let's take a look at the results once again. In the top 5, we start with around 8% of old cases left in inventory. Number 3 is Belgium, with around 6% of old cases. Number 2 is Sweden, also with around 6%. And Spain now has around 5.5% of old cases in its inventory. Well done, Spain. Have you taken specific efforts to close more of your old cases?
Hello, I hope you can hear me. Well, good morning, afternoon, and evening, and congratulations, first of all, to everyone on this tax certainty date, especially with all the progress that has been said and briefed in the previous explanations about the statistics and the rest. It is a pleasure and an honor to receive this award on behalf of Spain and both of its competent authorities, the transfer pricing cases and other cases. I think that one of the issues that we did focus on all the old cases, because sometimes you kind of forget that they're so long and you kind of have them on one side and you start with the new cases that they're new and you try to focus on them. But we did a specific effort on the 2016 before, and we are continue because we still have some that they're there and we're trying to advance on them. So both teams have worked very hard, and what we have seen in the COVID that we had some lacks of our internal structures. So Spain is fully committed to improve our internal procedures. We are going to see that sometimes we're going forward, other times because we are doing internal changes, it might delay, but in the future, it's going to facilitate and enhance our MAP outcomes in the most favorable ways. So we are really still developing, still working, and of course, with this, we always would have to thank our competent authority partners, because if it wasn't with their contributions and cooperations, Spain would never receive this award, because it's a work with the partners and with the other competent authorities. So that is the main issue. It's not Spain's award. I think it's all of ours. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Congratulations and well said. And I think a useful point to make that it's not only about short-term results, but also building the structure that'll help in the long run, even if it means a temporary slowdown. So good work. Thank you. Let's go to the third category, which is caseload management. And this award is given to the jurisdiction that best managed its total caseload, which is determined by comparing the number of cases closed with the number of cases that it has to deal with. There's an award for the large MAP jurisdictions, those with more than 100 cases left in their inventory, and one for jurisdictions with a moderate inventory, between 20 and 100 cases left. And the winners are Luxembourg for jurisdictions with a large inventory, and Norway for jurisdictions with a medium-sized inventory. Now let's look at the results. The ratio we're looking at is designed that compared to cases closed in 2020 with the total caseload during that year, calculated using their starting inventory and the new cases started during the year. For the jurisdictions with a large inventory, we see that third is the United Kingdom with 43%, second is Belgium with 45%, and in first place, Luxembourg with 68%. For jurisdictions with a medium-sized inventory, Singapore is third with 33%, Australia comes second with 44%, and Norway is first with 61%. So both winners had a closing ratio of at least 60%, which is very impressive. Luxembourg, again, my congratulations. I expect there may be a link between you winning this category and the previous one, where I suppose you not only managed to close a lot of old cases, but also a lot of cases that started in 2020. What did the trick? Was it better organization, good cooperation with your MAP partners, or a combination? I don't know if we have Luxembourg.
I can see Luxembourg. They have the hand up. I'm not sure that you're able to speak, but we can clearly see you, and I think we have your hand up.
Good morning from Luxembourg. We are pleased to receive this. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. We are pleased to receive this award for our work. And it's clearly a combination of a good organization internally, but also a good cooperation with other competent authorities, especially our neighboring countries. So it is not only a award for us, but also for them, I think. And I would also like to thank the Secretariat for the good work they do. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and congratulations. And also congratulations to Norway. What can you tell us about the keys to your success?
Thank you so much. What a nice surprise. We received the exact same award last year, and that really motivated us to work even harder. And this year's prize gives us new motivation. As we also mentioned last year, the Best Action 14 and the work of the FTA MAP Forum has really had a great impact on the way we work with our MAP cases. Now we have a much more higher focus on MAP cases, and we have streamlined our work processes. And we would also like to thank all of our treaty partners that we have worked with on the MAP cases during 2020. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and congratulations again to Luxembourg and Norway. Let's move to the next category, which is cooperation. And this category recognizes jurisdictions that work together particularly well and that reach the most number of agreements as compared to their total caseload, calculated using the number of cases in its start inventory and the cases started during 2020. As we've heard from so many of the recipients so far, a MAP is not something that you can do by yourself, with the exceptions of cases where you grant unilateral relief, of course. But it's something that needs to be worked on together. And there's really rewards for great cooperation, and this award highlights that. So here we have an award for jurisdictions that manage their joint caseload well, and the winners are, for transfer pricing cases, Italy and Spain. And for other cases, Norway and Sweden. Now let's take a look at the results. Here, an agreement score was designed that compared the cases fully resolved in 2020 by a pair of jurisdictions as compared to their total MAP caseload, calculated using their starting inventory and new cases started during the year. I need to clarify that only jurisdictions that had more than 20 joint cases were taken into consideration, and that this only relates to the cases received after January 2016, as we don't have information on a jurisdiction by jurisdiction basis for the old cases. For transfer pricing cases, Denmark and Germany managed to close a substantial portion of their joint caseload with an agreement fully resolving the taxation at issue, coming in third with an agreement score of 37. Canada and the United States did a little better, around 45, coming in at second, but Italy and Spain are the best pair. They managed to close a majority of their joint caseload with an agreement score of 60. For other cases, Ireland and the UK did well with an agreement score of almost 47. Netherlands and the UK had an agreement score of close to 75, which is great. However, Norway and Sweden closed almost all joint cases with an agreement score of 153. Italy and Spain, congratulations. I see that you resolved 31 cases with full agreement in less than 19 months. Italy, could you share with us what contributed to the good cooperation between you and Spain?
Okay, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. So, on behalf of the Italian Tax Administration and in my role as delegated competent authority, first of all, I would like to express a special thanks to the Secretariat of the MAP Forum for the accurate and excellent work done over the years. In our view, the peer review process, the data collection, and the preparation of the statistics is, as we all know, a time-consuming activity, but it has become, year after year, a key tool for our management and control of the MAP inventory. Personally, I'm really honored, happy, and let me say a little bit excited for this award for the MAP cooperation for attribution allocation cases with Spain. So my consideration are just a list of thanks to the Spanish colleagues for the tough and fruitful discussions that we had during the last year. Was not an ordinary year with a lot of difficulties due to the pandemic, but we did a really good job together. We built up with the Spanish colleagues, but also with the other competent authorities, really good relationships during these years. Thanks to our directors for their support in our duties, and a special thanks to all the colleagues working in the MAP and bilateral APA office. Without their daily efforts, this outcome wouldn't have been possible. And thank you again to the MAP Forum for having created this network of people among the competent authorities in order to improve the tax certainty for the taxpayer. What we can say is, let's continue on this way. I think that we are doing, all of us, a good job, and as we usually say, Rome wasn't built in a day. Thank you very much, and stay healthy and safe.
Thank you very much for that. Spain, what would you like to say about this effort?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Secretariat, and of course, thank you, our Italian colleagues, Simone, and the rest of the team. On behalf of the Spanish team, I would like to express my warmest thanks for this award. This award, as Simone said, acknowledges the close cooperation between the Spanish and the Italian teams, which has been built over the last few years. So from the Spanish side, this award has been possible thanks to the hard work of all the Spanish team. And also, as Simone said, thanks to the support of our managers, because this is very important for us in order to have resources to devote to these cases. And especially in this difficult time. In particular, I would like to highlight that during the pandemic, the Spanish team has been intensively using the electronic channels telephone calls, video conference with taxpayers, tax advisors, and of course our treaty partners, in particular with Italy and also with other treaty partners, in order to make advance the MAP cases. And I think that this award is, of course, devoted to the Spanish and to the Italian team, but it's also devoted to the good cooperation of taxpayers and tax advisors who have made possible to make progress and to solve the cases. So thank you very much, and muchas gracias de todo corazón.
Thank you for that. Let's now turn to the other cases, and Norway and Sweden, congratulations. I see you resolved 26 cases with full agreement in less than 6 months. Let's hear first from Norway. How did you manage this?
Thank you so much. This really overwhelmed us. Last year, we won the prize for a cooperation with the US, and now we win the prize for a cooperation with Sweden. It is no coincidence that we received this award together with Sweden, our neighbor country. We have always worked very well with Sweden on our MAP cases. We communicate very well, and then I do not refer to the fact that we actually speak almost the same language, but both of our country have a strong focus on resolving the cases, bearing in mind how important a solution is for the taxpayer. So once again, thanks to the Secretariat for the prize, and thanks to Sweden for our excellent cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Sweden, let's hear from you on this amazing accomplishment.
Well, thank you very much. And of course, thank you, Norway. We're so happy to receive this reward, and we are very proud. And I find this to be a confirmation of the good relationship we have built up with Norway over the years. As Nina said, we've had quite a number of cases together over the years. And I think that one of the keys to our success is our frequent communication. And another key is that both our competent authorities always try to understand the other party's arguments in each case. And there's always a will to find a way to take the cases forward. And we both make an effort to try to find a common solution. So I certainly hope that we can keep up this good work in the future with Norway and with other jurisdictions as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. And it highlights that achievements in a single year are usually built upon longstanding efforts together. And there's a great demonstration of that. So let's come to the fifth and final category, which is a new one this year, the most improved jurisdiction. And this award's given to the jurisdiction that showed the highest increase in the number of cases resolved with full agreement or unilateral relief in 2020 compared to 2019, despite all the difficulties posed by the pandemic. And the award goes to the jurisdiction that has had an increase in both categories of cases. And the winner is Ireland. And now let's look at the results. Ireland showed the most improvement with 27 more cases resolved as compared to 2019. Two other jurisdictions have also performed very well in each category of cases, but the improvement is limited to only one category of cases. These jurisdictions are Italy with an improvement of 57 for transfer pricing cases, and Luxembourg with an improvement of 27 for other cases. So Ireland, congratulations. Could you share with us what contributed to the great improvement in your overall MAP performance?
Thank you very much. Firstly, we would like to thank the Secretariat for the award. We're delighted to accept it. Everyone knows that 2020 was a challenging year, and to see the hard work and efforts of our own competent authority team and that of our treaty partners to be recognised is very rewarding. We'd like to thank our treaty partners especially, who worked with us in a productive, practical and principled way to reach agreement where double taxation was resolved. The results achieved during 2020 are the output of a number of actions that we took, such as adding additional resources to our competent authority team.
when international travel stopped early in 2020, we looked immediately to trying to do our meetings virtually in place of face-to-face meetings to ensure we continue to make progress and had our cases resolved. This actually allowed for more frequent meetings with some of our treaty partners and the options to discuss 1 or 2 cases per meeting rather than having a meeting where you're trying to discuss all cases together. We found this particularly helpful and helped us in making progress during 2020. That, along with our strong working relationships that we had established with our treaty partners. So again, just to say thank you to all our treaty partners for that, and we look forward to continuing to work together with all of you in trying to resolve more cases in an effective, efficient and timely manner going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that, and congratulations once again. Well, that brings us to the end of the awards, and let me first say congratulations to all of the winners. But even more importantly, congratulations to everyone for all of the efforts that we've put in. I think it's a great example of where the FTA can really contribute to providing better tax administration across the world, and in efforts to provide tax certainty, get appropriate outcomes. And I think while we strive individually to see if we can win an award and perform to the best of our abilities as an individual country, the key, as we've seen through many of the commentators receiving the awards, is to work together and to cooperate. And this, again, is a really important theme, I think, for us at the FTA, that together we're much, much stronger than we are individually. And this is a great example of that. And I would say that this performance is going to become more important in the years ahead. And so I think we've got a very strong foundation to build upon, but we're going to need to keep building. So thank you all for all your hard work. And for those of you that didn't make it to the podium this year, there's always a chance for next year. And in any event, let's keep working as FTA members to do the best job we can on the MAP front, and as well as other areas of administration of tax jurisdictions. And thank you for inviting me here today to share in this award ceremony. And take care and have a good rest of the morning, afternoon, or evening, as the case may be.
Thank you very much, Bob. Thanks for taking the time, and thanks to all the winners. And you can see it in the chat. And yes, the podium is available. Hopefully next year it's a podium we can actually physically stand on it. And then it is Paris, so we can see whether champagne can be arranged. So we shall see that as we look forward. I think we want to come back now to where we left it off. We had to rejig a bit the agenda. I already see Martin O'Rourke, who is the vice chair of the FDA MAP Forum, who's going to bring us back to the data and the MAP statistics that we released, and give us a sense whether that does resonate with the UK experience a bit. So Martin, over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Achim. I would also like to express thanks to Felicia and our colleagues for all the work we put in year after year to turn the theory behind the statistical framework into a practical tool for competent authorities around the world to measure performance. So much appreciated again, Felicia. Reflecting on the global statistics that we've just had a snapshot of, I am struck by similarities between the UK and the global experience. In the UK, in 2020, we closed a record number of cases, over 330 in fact, but we also received a record number of new requests, just over 400. So as with the global picture, the UK caseload continues to rise. And this has been the dominant trend since 2016. Just drilling down to our attribution and allocation cases, which are often the more complex and resource intensive ones. We went in 2016, we had 60 new requests. And by 2020, that number was up to 135. Which is a pretty big jump. We've gone from closing 37 cases in 2016 to over 100 in 2020. And the net result of all that is that the closing inventory of 200 in 2016 has gone up to 330 in 2020. So basically, I think we can see that there has been quite a change. Again, in line with the global picture, we saw an increase in the average times to resolve these cases. I'm not sure that there's a big linkage to the pandemic here. I think one of the major factors for us is that in 2020, the UK made a concerted effort to actively review all of our pre-2016 cases. And we recognise that some of them are just paused, and there's not a lot you can do about that when they're sitting behind domestic remedy, basically. But there were quite a few that were stuck. And so we engaged with the relevant treaty partners to share our analysis of the sticking points and work together to try and come up with principled and pragmatic ways to get these cases resolved. And as a result, the UK managed to settle half of its pre-2016 caseload in 2020. Inevitably, this has an impact on average times. I mean, it's worth noting the UK continued to meet the minimum standard with regards to post-2025 cases, but when this number is taken together with the pre-2016 results, it did push us over the line. Every pre-16 case has an impact on average times, but I think with our reducing caseload, we're beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel in that respect. What we can see is that over the 5 years that we've had the Action 14, that the MAP landscape has changed dramatically. And I think that's probably a familiar thing for many of our major treaty partners, and it's certainly in line with the global picture that Felicia has taken us through. The first reaction to this kind of picture can often focus almost exclusively on the challenges facing competent authorities around the world. But I think there are maybe some more nuanced takeaways for us to think about. It's important to remember, first of all, competent authorities don't control the flow of new cases. In tax compliance, jurisdictions can choose to focus limited resources in any way they see fit, for example, by targeting significant risks. And this gives those jurisdictions the ability to control the level of new cases each year. MAP is very different. Provided we've got a treaty in place and the conditions for MAP are met, the taxpayer has an entitlement, an absolute entitlement to access to MAP. So when we think about the upwards trend in the new MAP requests, it's perhaps worth just reflecting on some of the underlying reasons. And I think there are a few positives that we can take away. First, I think it reflects the fact that jurisdictions are more and more getting to grips with the BEPS risks associated with transfer pricing. For me, that has to be a good thing. It's inevitably going to lead to an increase in the likelihood that taxpayers will be reporting the right amount of profits in the right tax jurisdictions at the right times. Almost inevitably in cross-border situations, this will lead to juridical or economic double taxation. And so that's where the MAP comes in. So I believe there is a direct correlation between the increase in the level of compliance activity by jurisdictions with the increase in the levels for MAP requests that follow. I think a second positive from this trend is that it does, I believe, reflect some growing confidence in the taxpayer community in the MAP process. More and more taxpayers don't have to consider double taxation as a price to be paid if they want to live, work, trade, or invest overseas. And that has to be a good thing, not just for the taxpayers, but also for governments and for the global economy as a whole. However, having picked up the positives in the style of John to go to the other side, it still leaves us with the challenge of addressing the steadily increasing global caseload. First and foremost, it's crucial that competent authority teams are adequately resourced with people who are trained and ready to go. But I'm not sure the solution to increasing caseloads can be limited to just throwing more and more resource at the problem. We do need to create an environment for competent authorities to come together to reach principled solutions which eliminate taxation not in accordance with their treaties in a more efficient and effective manner. So how are we going to do that? I think the work of the MAP Forum is absolutely central to this. I mean, other speakers have already touched on some critical strands of work that we're involved in. The 2020 review, these subgroups, collaboration with WP6. And I'm confident that this work is going to lead us to clearer guidance, an increase in shared understanding of what we're dealing with, and the creation of practical tools to help competent authorities drive up performance. Beyond that, as a community, I think we're continuing to commit significant resources to capacity building for all of us. So I guess we're on a bit of a continuous improvement journey. As I think about where we are today compared with where we were in 2016, I think it's pretty clear to me that we're in a much better place. But expectations are rightly continuing to rise, and we must continue to raise our performance to meet those expectations. Governments, tax administrations, competent authorities, taxpayers and advisors all have a role to play as we strive for greater tax certainty through dispute prevention and dispute resolution. In 5 years from now, I'm confident we'll be able to look back and see that the fruits of our labour have produced some tangible results in the MAP process. And I'm sure this will be reflected in Felici's 2025 Global MAP stats. Thanks, Achim.
Already looking ahead to that. I like it. That's some long-term planning. Long-term, also turning over to Japan to Oki Yasui, who's the last speaker, the Director of National Tax Agent Japan, and he's going to give us an impression, I think, in particular, also how Japan coped throughout the pandemic and to continue its MAP resolution activity. Oki, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Achim. Thank you for having me in this session. And let me start from numbers. First, in Japan, the number of cases we closed for the year from July 2020 to June 2021, which includes both MAP cases and IPA cases, decreased about 20% from the previous year. We think the pandemic has impacted on this result in several ways. First, there was a Japanese government overall policy to restrict the number of workers who come to the office to less than 30%, 30. A problem for us is that we cannot join remote CA meetings from home due to our strict security policy in handling taxpayers' information. And to overcome these restrictions, we had to proceed with a number of staff members who did not have CA meetings from coming to the office at office. In order to secure the frequency of remote CA meetings, we had to do that. And secondly, even we tried to secure the frequency of remote CA meetings as many as possible, remote meetings have some inherent difficulties, I think, compared to face-to-face meetings. One is the time differences with our treaty partners. For example, we just recently had a series of remote CA meetings with a treaty partner for 3 weeks in a row. However, the total amount of time we could discuss is equivalent to a week-long face-to-face meeting. And now, let me apart from these logistics issues, COVID-19 is already becoming the issue itself of CA meetings, CA discussions, and especially we are getting APA cases, the issue itself of which is the impact of the COVID-19. When we got these such cases, we need to refer to the guidance on COVID-19 published by OECD last December. And I think all CAs are getting in a position that needed to live up to the responsibility to provide tax certainty to taxpayers who are making genuine efforts to analyze the impact of COVID-19 on their businesses. And to sum up, although our performance in terms of numbers of closed cases was less than the year before, I believe it's fair to say that we have made every effort to resolve as many cases as possible, even under the uneasy conditions some are impacted by the pandemic. And I'd like to emphasize here that this has been a mutual efforts and cooperation with our treaty partners. So allow me to take this opportunity to thank all our partner colleagues for your cooperation. And I and we are looking forward to resuming our face-to-face meetings and see you in person as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Oki, and I can just echo that. We look forward to seeing you all in person. We also look forward to relieving you because we are running a little late and I think you have other commitments. So we're in the last section here, which is the closing remarks, which I will make very, very brief. Just to thank all of you, to thank the winners, to thank all of you, the speakers, business, the participation to make this possible. I think we've all heard that tax certainty is not just for Christmas and it's not just for today. So it should be with us not just today and as we run up to Christmas, but even beyond. And I we will certainly stay on top as much as we can inside the OECD. There's a big tax certainty pillar that's been here for a long time that hopefully makes its way also felt inside the pillars, but also beyond. And then let me just finish. I think we always get thanks from business. This time we do want to thank business, and we want to in particular thank Will Morris, I think, because we might have seen him here in his current role, not necessarily for the last time, but one of her later performances. So a big thank you to you, Will. I think you've made this a big part of your agenda. And as we have heard, this cannot work unless there's cooperation between tax administrations, but this also cannot work unless there's cooperation between business and tax administrations. And we want to thank you here all from the whole team, Sandra and everybody else. Felicie sadly had to go back and build more pillars, but she's also still with us. That you know, it does require also very constructive engagements on this important subject of tax certainty, whether it's MAP, whether it's ICAP, many things. And so it was very, very helpful to have you here as a partner to make this work and bring this to what it is. So we are very grateful to everything also you have helped us do on the tax certainty agenda, which I just wanted to also say as part of the closing remarks here. But then over to you maybe for the real closing remarks.
Yeah, I never get the last word in my family, so this is an unusual time. But thank you all very much. Congratulations to all the MAP winners. I said to Akim before this that, you know, the idea of tax awards sounds slightly corny, but actually it really works. And it really has done. And one of the great things about this process since, you know, with Action 14, since BEPS really is, you know, there was a lot of private sector complaining back in 2016. They've only started in 2016. What does that mean? And I said, wait 5 years and it'll mean 5 years, okay? And that actually is where we find ourselves now, with statistics which are meaningful, with a peer review process which actually works. And as Diane Hay said in the chat, actually with taxpayers who want to get involved in MAP, which goes back to the point that Martin was making, which was that, you know, more cases, everybody was making, but Martin made latterly, which was more cases are arising because more people want to be involved in this. More cases are also getting closed. And that's actually a function, a feature, an indication that the system is working. And, you know, I think everything that we've heard today is just, you know, has been really good. Sure, I mean, John was honest right at the beginning. There are, you know, some things take too long to solve. Some are still being denied. There is one large country that should take a close look at its numbers, and we'd encourage them to do that. But you know, for the most part, things really are truly working very well. And you know, to the extent that the taxpayers can help, and it really is only a question of help. I mean, the main stuff comes down to you guys. That is the treaty, the way the treaties are set out. It's your job, and we fully understand that. But you know, to the extent that we can help you, both in straightforward MAP, but also some of the things that Akim and others were talking about in terms of these more innovative approaches, not just to dispute resolution, but to dispute prevention, then we can do that. And I was delighted to hear Laurence talk about her positive experience there. I hope more taxpayers will get involved in ICAP, and we can find ways of using that, yes, in the dreaded pillars, as well as elsewhere, to help not just dispute resolution, but also dispute prevention. So I'll stop there. It's been a huge privilege for me to be involved in this journey over the past 5 or 6 years now. I look forward to continuing to be involved in any way that I can do. But I really just want from business to thank you, the OECD Secretariat, and you, the competent authorities and the FTA, just for the great work which has been done here, which actually shows that we can work together to make the international tax system work better. And that's a really good thing. So thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Will, and thank you, everybody. And hopefully see you soon in person in Paris, and otherwise at the Tax Certainty Day. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.